Um, well, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, before we get into your work and your mission, I want to know 4 years ago, this pandemic began. We didn't know where it was going to go, what the ramifications were going to be. How did you survive that time period, and how did it subsequently change you?
Sure. So, um, with regards to professional, approaches and, the pandemic hitting us from a professional standpoint, it actually didn't. And also personally as well, it didn't really have any ramifications. And the reason is because, excuse me, I actually went virtual with my business in 2014. So the virtual world and doing things from a remote perspective was already well in my lexicon and my vocabulary. I also had quite a bit of experience with teaching online. So being able to do virtual instruction as well was part of, the whole role of what I was doing at the time. So there was really very little transition involved. My husband and I homeschool our four kids, so that was not an issue either. We were already kind of well in place, with our curriculum for the kids, and the only real thing that ended up happening personally was that we were limited with where we could go and doing things as like field trips, so to speak, as a family, whether it was for academic reasons for the kids or just for fun. So we were able to really adjust very well. And the great part of the pandemic is that it helped with not only reinforcing what we were doing and also enabled us to strengthen what we were doing, but it opened up so many doors because now everybody was speaking the same virtual and remote language where connecting in utilizing those forms became more normalized and easier and more accessible for people. And that, of course, helped with starting to address a lot of the stigma around mental health care and how it can be received, support and how it can be received. And that I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, that was a huge outgrowth of that time period. So it seems like it just made your profession that much easier and more accessible.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
So let's get into that profession. I want to know what you do on a daily basis. So to do that, let's get in front of a bunch of third graders at career day. One of
Okay.
the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Absolutely. So I'm a psychologist by trade, and I've spent over 20 years doing clinical work. I really quickly realized that I wanted to reach the masses. So going beyond just one-on-one care, I had a really great passion for developing programs, for developing different curriculums, which I wouldn't say that to the little child curriculum, but different programs for reaching the masses on a recovery basis, for rehabilitation and recovery. So I started to focus on doing more program development and administrative work simultaneous to teaching because I'm also a professor and just kept both of those lanes going. And now I'm the editor in chief at recovery.com, and I do a lot of content development and awareness based work to advocate for receiving recovery based services. And so that helps me fulfill my mission along with coaching and consulting and being a professor, educating people with really reaching the masses.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
So I wanted to be the MD white coat doctor. And what changed that was I was actually in an accelerated program in university. I was on track, ready to graduate, do the whole, med school thing. And I started going through rotations in the hospital. And my supervisor quite literally said to me, "You cannot spend more than 5 minutes in that room with that patient. If you're doing more than 5 minutes, then you're doing something wrong, and that's going to work against you." And something just hurt my heart
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
that supervisor said that because I instantly knew I wanted to sit down and talk with the people. I wanted to look at that person from a holistic view. And at the time when I was going through school, integrated care, you know, holistic approaches to care was not really part of mainstream lexicon.
Yeah.
So I felt lost. But when I was in third grade, I wanted to be a doctor. And then as I realized that that was my calling, wanting to sit down, wanting to hear people, wanting to connect with people on that level, um, long story short, I ended up on a biopsychology class and I felt so relieved because I'd found my field, you know.
Yeah.
So it was really, really a great journey. I'm not regretful of it at all. And I'm thankful for the fact that I landed on this profession.
The irony of that comment that staying in there over 5 minutes is gonna be a detriment is so anterior to it with what's going on with the medical industry right now. It's so rushed, it's so impersonal, you know? There's just so many levels of it where I know personally, I've done it for long enough that I just don't feel like
Mhm.
I need to get anything more than just the basics, and it's gonna be a problem if I keep them in the room. So,
Sure.
yeah, that's wild. So you found your calling. So let me ask you this. Who's been a hero? Who's been an inspiration in your career journey?
My gosh. My mom and my dad, you know, their work ethic is what drove me when I was a child. You know, I think it's easy as a child to reflect and say, "Oh my gosh, they were always working or they were always very into what they were doing." And there's always one of two ways that a person can take that, you know, multiple, but let's just, you know, break it down that way. Either you're going to be resentful, right? And be like, "Oh, I never had my parents," or you're going to try to figure out how you can work around it, but work with them, right? So I was the child who did the latter.
Yeah.
Um, when my mom was my both of my parents were professors in the arts and education, and my mom would spend countless amounts of hours grading papers and, you know, like doing all the things. She was also a vocalist, so she spent lots of time singing and practicing, you know, her art. Same with my dad. He was in the fine arts. He was, you know, painting and doing photography. And so instead of isolating, I decided to join them. So even if it was just me in the corner doing my own thing or sitting next to them doing my own thing while they were, you know, doing whatever they needed to do, that was my way of not only spending time with them, but understanding what they were passionate about and feeling that it was really important to follow your passions and that you can really do it all. You can, you know, you can have your family and be passionate about your work, whatever that work might be, and integrate everything together. So, my parents, yeah.
So let me ask you this. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, spend a little time and talk to them, who would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I would like to spend some more time with probably I would say Gabor Mate
Okay.
was great.
Yeah.
Um, you know, his whole approach to just holistic approaches to healing and recovery is aligned with my own. He certainly has been formative in, you know, my approaches to the work that I do with people one on one, as well as program development, and what he advocates for in terms of, you know, whole body health and brain health, to which Dr. Amen does the same. You know, Dan Amen is an advocate for looking at mental health, not as mental health, but like brain health. Um, I subscribe to that. So it would be great to just hang out with them and definitely just soak in everything that they have to offer and teach. Yeah.
So what is your motivator every day to do the work that you do? You clearly have to give a lot to help people get to a better place, but you also have to feed yourself
Mhm.
and evolve as a human being. What is that collective energy that makes you go through the day to do that?
Oh my goodness. I'm extremely passionate about integration and making accessibility to care a real thing. Right? So that is my driving force. And what continues to motivate me is my own family, so I have 4 children, like I mentioned, and I want to be able to contribute to their future, knowing that not only they can, see me as a model for advocacy and for, all the things, mental health, good health, holistic health, but also wanting to be able to serve communities and know that you're doing something for the world. So I want to build that so that they have something to walk into. And even if, there's always going to be continuous improvement, for them to know that they can contribute to that improvement as citizens of the world.
So, as someone that's looking out for the well-being of people and helping them getting to a better place, what is the most common thing from a psychological standpoint that you see with patients? One of the more limiting beliefs, so to speak, that permeates a lot of your clients that can be eradicated, that can be localized and honed in on.
Stigma. Like it's the fear, like stigma, fear, synonymous in some cases, in most cases, where if I start to dive into something that's going to be scary for me, that's definitely a common one. What are other people going to think if I do this, right? Perception of other people. And so also, like, what if it's too much? What if I can't handle it? I feel like I'm going to break, if I start to dive into these things. So it's fear and stigma that really drive a lot of the people that I work with, from and prevent them from receiving care and services. So part of that accessibility component is, again, breaking that stigma and making others realize that mental health care, no matter where you want to receive that care on the spectrum of care, whether it's one-on-one care or a treatment center or just, consulting with a group of people, like getting group therapy or having a group that you can associate with, is accessible to you. It's good for you, and it can help you. And in so doing, and subscribing to something that is, mental health based and self-care based, you're going to give yourself or continue to build into a platform from which you can operate to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So and you have to be anonymous, of course, but what has been one of your favorite client success stories?
Oh, um, traumatic brain injury was one of the first uh, rehab based services that I got into and started to specialize in. So I would say collectively, anybody that I've worked in, with from that recovery and rehab perspective that's had successful outcomes or even had multiple hurdles and overcome them is like the win. I've worked with the military population where also those types of, chronic pain, TBI, PTSD, like all of these diagnoses are there, they're real, they're co-occurring. And with each of those people that I've been able to work with, I can successfully say that the everybody that I've worked with and touched has been able to understand that they can be formative in giving themselves a piece of mental health peace and care on a daily basis. And so that's a win for me. Just even understanding that you can embrace your own self-care and, moving forward with your goals and being able to understand them as achievable, whether it's managing your chronic pain, working through a trauma, or tackling day-to-day work, like whatever the case is, you can do it. And how we do that, like we can do that together, and I'll give you the tools to be able to do that, and understanding that is the win. Yeah.
So speaking of goals, Matt, when you look
Mhm.
back on your life and where you've evolved to and what you've accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, I'm I feel very blessed. I feel accomplished in a lot of different areas. I wanted to have a big family. I did that. I have that. And I continuously try to, be better than I was yesterday for my family. I have progressively worked through my career following my passion and my aspirations, not only to be, on this mission for breaking stigma and increasing accessibility to care, but also working with individuals to help them through whatever they're going through. And a lot of individuals. And I've also been a professor, and I've educated and taught future generations of counselors and coaches and therapists to be able to, create their own models and utilize, for sure, evidence-based care, but really put themselves into both the art and science of what they do, out on the field. So I'm very proud of all of those achievements, and there's so much more to be had.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, you ran into an 18-year-old version of you, you could
Mhm.
give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What
Yeah,
advice would you impart on that young version? And would that version of you listen?
sure. I would say don't stop, keep it going, keep your chin up. There might be some hurdles, but you're going to land on the things that you want. So just keep plugging away and pace yourself while you do it, because you'll get there.
So everyone has a perception of you,
Mhm,
family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your
mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I think, my perception, I think my knee-jerk reaction to that question is I am continuously aspiring. And that to me is really important because it feeds and fuels each of those buckets that I just mentioned. Like I
Yeah.
aspire to be a wonderful mother and wife. I, aspire to be a wonderful professor. I aspire to be a great coach and advocate for mental health and, training individuals to walk into the field. I aspire to be a person who drives content and, services and accessibility to care. So aspirational is how I would, say I perceive myself.
So if anyone out there wants to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, any of the good business, where can they go?
Mhm. My handle is at the official Dr. Mala, and my website is drmala.net.
Okay, excellent. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for talking about it today. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you too, and thank
Yes,
you for having me.
absolutely. Thank you.